Alrighty, everyone, welcome back to the channel. So we are gonna do a reaction for the first time ever. And I figured we'd do something that's fantastic and funny, and I definitely would say this has probably been the best interaction I've seen between two presidents um, of different country or the same, probably in a while. Just the way they feed off each other, the way that they're uh, you know, putting CNN down like they're children and just using common sense. It's fantastic. So without further ado, we're gonna get into the video, and yeah, I'll pause it from time to time, just to give you guys a reaction. But I did watch a little bit, so but I'm gonna replay it. So let's get it.
Let's hear the question from this very low-rated anchor at CB.
Thank you, President Bukele,
Bro, like,
to
this
ask
is
President
hilarious.
Bukele to help return the man who your administration says was
Which one
mistakenly
is it?
deported. The man who was mistakenly deported to El Salvador.
Well, let me ask.
And so you guys know, the guy that they're talking about is a guy that was staying in the U.S. that was from El Salvador, that had gang ties, and the U.S. wanted to bring him back. Went to court. The judge said that he had to come back, and yeah, President Trump essentially told them to kick rocks, and President Bukele is just like, no, it's not going to happen. We're not going to send people back that are criminals. We're going to keep them in jail, keep our country safe, especially the way El Salvador has turned shit around. I mean, bro, when I say they were one of the worst countries in the world, and this is coming from like me traveling, being in the military, stuff like that, they were really, really bad. I mean, they might as well have been a war-torn country at some points. But yeah, let's go back to it.
Pam, would you answer that question?
Sure, President. First and foremost, he was illegally in our country. He had been illegally in our country. And in 2019, two courts, an immigration court and an appellate immigration court, ruled that he was a member of MS-13 and he was illegally in our country. Right now, it was additional paperwork had needed to be done. That's up to El Salvador if they want to return him.
Don't
That's
worry.
not up to
The
us.
good
The
stuff will
Supreme
come
Court
here
ruled,
just in a bit,
President,
so just stay
that
tuned.
if, as El
That's
Salvador wants to
hilarious.
return him, this is international matters, foreign affairs. If they wanted to return him, we would facilitate it, meaning provide a plane.
So will you return him?
And you are doing a great job.
Thank you.
Stephen Miller, wait a minute.
What's up, guys?
Can you
Thanks for
just
joining.
also
Just
respond
doing
to that
my
question?
first
Because,
reaction,
it's asked
so
by CNN, and
hope you
they
guys
always
enjoy.
ask it with a slant because they're totally slanting because they don't know what.
And I swear, this is Trump loves getting on CNN. I mean, it's like the guy. It's like the bully that always tries to come back and beat you up. You ever watched anime? There's always this one guy that wants to come back and beat up the hero because he thinks he can do it and he can't. And it's like One Punch Man. Just give him a flick, they'll leave you alone, but they'll keep coming back. It's more annoying, but he loves ripping on them every single time. No, not yet, but I will get to that video for you guys. So just stay tuned.
What's happening. That's why nobody's watching them. But would you answer that
I'll
question?
probably do that video next,
Yes,
actually.
gladly. So, as Pam mentioned, there's an illegal alien from El Salvador. So, with respect to you, he's a citizen of El Salvador. So, it's very arrogant even for American media to suggest that we would even tell El Salvador how to handle their own citizens as a starting point. As two immigration courts found that he was a
That is 100% facts. Like, bro, how are you gonna tell another country to send their citizens to come to here with them being like a gang member or just doing anything criminal? Like, don't get me wrong, usually we do have some influence, but I mean, usually it's with things that we want in a good manner, not necessarily things that we want, with bad things coming into us or coming back in this case. So
member of MS-13. When President Trump declared
oh yeah, so
MS-13
that
to be a
that
foreign
is
terrorist
so that's who they're
organization,
talking about. It's
that meant that he was no longer eligible.
yeah, that's the guy that they sent by mistake. But I mean, after everything that they reviewed, apparently he's still in the gang. He came here illegally a couple times or once. So, look, my take on it is I get there are people here that are done right, came here illegally, but done things right, paid taxes and stuff, I think there should be somewhat of a system in that, especially if they were kids, right? They had no say or choice in the matter. They're young, their parents wanted something better. But for the most part, that's not generally the case. So, yeah, let's get back to it.
Under federal law, which I'm sure you know, you're very familiar with the INA, that he was no longer eligible for any form of immigration relief in the United States. So he had a deportation order that was valid, which meant that under our law, he's not even allowed to be present in the United States and had to be returned because of the foreign terrorist designation. This issue was then, by a
Which I
district
think
court
was a
judge,
fantastic thing to do.
completely inverted, and a district court judge tried to tell the administration that they had to kidnap a citizen of El Salvador and fly him back here. That issue was raised to the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court said the district court order was unlawful, and its main components were reversed 9-0 unanimously, stating clearly that neither Secretary of State nor the President could be compelled by anybody to forcibly retrieve a citizen of El Salvador from El Salvador, who again is a member of MS-13, which, as I'm sure you understand, rapes little girls, murders women, murders children, is engaged in the most barbaric activities in the world, and I can
That's a
promise you,
fair
if he was
point.
your
I'll
neighbor,
give you
you
that.
would move
Fair
right away.
point.
So you don't plan to
But the
ask for
Supreme
anything
Court is
to get
asking
him back?
to,
Is that
But I think they kind of just went over that here.
Was it 9-0?
Yes,
They,
9-0.
I guess he had already gone to court previously, so you know what? It's funny. I wasn't at first. Me personally, if you haven't been in the military, I don't think you should be president. It's a personal opinion, but there it is, right? Now, going forward, didn't vote for him the first time. Actually, I've never voted. I did like his second term, or his second term starting. I like it a lot better than the first one going in. But yeah, I would say at this point in time, definitely a Trump guy, especially with foreign policies.
In our favor.
In our favor, against the district court ruling, saying that
And I did like his economy the first go around. First go around, fantastic. I don't care what people say. There was more money in people's pockets. Stocks was going up. Gas was cheap relative to like early or mid 2010s. So yeah, 100%.
no district court has the power to compel the foreign policy function of the United States. As Pam said, the ruling solely stated that if this individual at El Salvador's sole discretion was sent back to our country, that we could deport him a second time.
Well,
No version of this legally ends up with him ever living here because he is a citizen of El Salvador. That is the president of El Salvador. Your questions about it, per the court, can only be directed to him.
I asked
¿Usted lo
President
liberaría,
Bukele,
Presidente
what is
Bukele?
can President Bukele weigh in on this? Do you plan to return him?
Well, I'm suppose you're not suggesting that I smuggle a terrorist into the United States, right?
It's
I mean,
always
how can I smuggle, how can I return him to the United States? Like,
I don't know if any of you, I don't know if any of you guys heard that. It was kind of low when he said it, but he's like, "How can I return terrorists to the United States?" It's like, or I mean, that's 100% true, bro. Just in general, criminals, right? You wouldn't send them to, the country where they just got deported, especially if they're not a citizen of that country. No, you're good, man. Like I said, first reaction, this is me learning and being entertained by it. So, hey, you're good, man. I like it too. So, keeps me engaged, keeps you guys engaged. So,
I smuggle him into the United States, or what do I do? Of course, I'm not gonna.
plus, you're the only one
It's like-
in the comments right now.
I mean,
So,
this-
all good,
The
brother.
question is preposterous. How can I smuggle a terrorist into the United States? I don't have the power to return him to the United States.
you could release him inside El Salvador.
Yeah, but I'm not releasing, I mean, we're not very fond of releasing terrorists into our country. I mean, we just turned the murder capital of the world into the safest country of the Western Hemisphere, and you want us to go back into releasing criminals so we can go back to being the murder capital of the world? No, that's not going to happen.
Well, they'd love to have
And like I said earlier, if you guys missed it, 100% facts, bro. They were one of the worst countries to live in. Whether you travel there for vacation or I don't know who did during those times, but or you were a citizen, terrible, bro. And the fact that he did this in about a 5-year span is even more insane. And yeah, kudos, man. Really kudos to him and turning his country around to be one of the more respectable countries currently.
criminal,
on the Western Hemisphere.
Yeah, I mean, there's a fascination.
They would love it.
Yeah.
They're sick, these are sick people. Marco, do you have something to say about
Yeah, I mean,
It's
Stephen,
just the way he said
I don't
it,
understand
bro.
what the confusion is. This individual is a citizen of El Salvador. He was illegally in the United States and was returned to his country. That's where you deport people, back to their country of origin, except for Venezuela that wasn't refusing to take people back, or places like that. I can tell you this, Mr. President, no, the foreign policy of the United States is conducted by the President of the United States, not by a court.
Which
and
is
no
true.
court in the United States has a right to conduct the foreign policy of the United States. It's that simple.
Which is true.
End of
The
story.
president controls anything
That's what the
regarding
Supreme Court held.
foreign affairs
The Supreme Court said
and
exactly what Marco
border
said,
control
that
for
no
the most
court
part.
has the
Obviously, there's
authority to
budgeting
compel
and
a
stuff
foreign
like
policy
that
function in
that
the
kind
United
of
States.
intertwines.
We won a
but,
case 9-0,
generally,
and
that
people
is the
like
case.
CNN are portraying it as a loss, as usual, because they want foreign terrorists in the country who kidnap women and children. But President Trump, his policy is foreign terrorists that are here illegally get expelled from the country, which, by the way, is a 90-10 issue.
Well, Mr. President, you said
Which
that
is also
the Supreme
true.
Court
I
said
think
someone needed to
generally-
be returned, that you would
I think generally people would want to get rid of criminals that are from foreign countries. We want to get rid of our. Don't get me wrong, right? There are people who are formed that change their lives, get better, and actually be productive members of society. 100%, and those are the people we want to keep. But if we could get rid of our criminals, we would. We just can't legally because they're U.S. citizens and they have every right to remain in their country. And technically, that only applies to citizens born here, because you can actually lose your citizenship if you came here from a different country. Yeah, so if you guys want to look that up, you can. But that is something that is a possibility.
abide by that. You said that on Air Force One just a few days ago, and they said
How long do we
that
have to answer
it must
this
be
question from
facilitated.
you? Why don't you just say, isn't it wonderful that we're keeping
All right, so I just got a question asked. Let's see. If the Fed government can deport people without due process, what's stopping them from claiming you or me are here illegally and sending us to a country we've never been to? So for one, if you got a passport, Social Security that's actually yours, you can't get deported. Second, it's generally people. Well, actually, the only people that should be getting deported are people of other foreign countries. Again, you can't deport someone that's in the U.S. That is a U.S. citizen. This isn't like back in the day where you're getting exiled. The proof of it. It's not gonna happen. Now, I'm not gonna say it hasn't happened because I'm sure it has. But guess what you can do? Take it to court. Get a settlement. Make some money off of it. 3 days in a shitty situation, I get a couple million. I don't know, man. I wish it happened to me. Sounds kind of a good stepping stone, getting your life straightened out after some horrific stuff, right?
criminals out of our country? Why can't you just say that? Why do you go over and over? And that's why nobody watches you anymore. You know, you have no credibility. Please, go ahead.
President Trump, thank you so much. How many illegal criminals are you planning on exporting?
All right, and I haven't
to
watched the
El
video from
Salvador?
this
And
point going
President
forward,
Bukele,
so
how many are you
everything
willing to
else
take
needed to be
from the
here.
US?
As many as possible. And I just asked the president, you know, it's this massive complex that he built, jail complex. I said, can you build some more of them, please? As many as we can get out of our country that were allowed in here by incompetent Joe Biden through open borders. Open borders. You probably hear open borders and you can't even understand it because nobody can understand. Nobody smart or with
And that's not a
common sense
thing.
can understand it.
No people's
So-
borders are just open where anyone can go.
We have millions of people that should not be in this country.
Everyone in the world has their own kind of borders. China literally has a great wall that kept the Mongols
We
out
have
during their
millions of
time.
people that
So like
are
people have
murderers,
had
drug
borders
dealers.
throughout
They've been
their
allowed
time.
to come into our country by other
Throughout
countries
history.
that were very smart. When they heard that this very low IQ president, and by the way, I took my cognitive exam as part of my physical exam, and I got the highest mark, and one of the doctors said, sir, I've never seen anybody get that kind of, that was the highest mark. I hope you're happy with that, although they haven't been bugging me too much to take a cognitive, but I did do my physical and it was released. I hope you're all happy with it. I notice there's no question.
So the asylum claim and so the way it works, right? If your country is like in an actual war. Now, Mexico, that could have been an example. El Salvador could have been an example because of you could consider the gangs in retrograde now that they're terrorists, right? You could have definitely had a case for like, hey, our country is in shambles, war torn, like we're actually afraid for our life, political wise, stuff like that. Asylum in terms of that regard, sure, absolutely 100%. But the issue is that there was really no, you could, and I'm not even talking about the apps, right? I'm just talking about you could go online. There are all these, what are called NGOs that essentially would do all the work for you. You just give them your information. They'd send it up to the government and be like, oh, yeah, you're good. Here's your visa. Here's your claim or your asylum. You're good to go. We'll see you in a couple months. And I know this from personal experience. I'm talking about like family members have asked me to get them from countries that are, so Eritrea is one of the countries that's probably one of the worst in the world, right? It's like the North Korea of Africa. Terrible place. Try to get family over from there. And a lot of it was you just put in the information that you wanted. It didn't even necessarily have to be true. So I know for a fact that people were coming in that they were putting in their claim or the case that wasn't true and that they weren't in those situations. So that's just my take on that. Obviously, you'll have people disagree, but asylum, if it's true, absolutely, we'll take you, we'll help you, and we'll do our part. But you also at the same time have to assimilate and become a good member of society, you know. And I know it's going to take a little bit of time, but that's how it should be. And then for all the others, nah, denied. You're not a citizen. You have no, unless, especially if you don't have any family ties here. Yeah, we're good. We don't need you.
So probably you are. But the cognitive, they said to me.
Sorry, I'll pause it. Last time I'll let it run. We barely take care of our own people, our vets, our military, our homeless, single parenthood. The struggle for us Americans in general is hard enough without adding people to our country, especially them not being productive. So,
Sir, would you like to take a cognitive test? I said, did Biden take one? No. Did anybody take one? No, not too many people took them. I said, what about Obama? Did he take one? No, he didn't take one either. I said, let me be the only one to take one. But I've actually taken them 3 times already. I like taking them because they're not too tough for me to take. But we had a great physical exam, so I know you're going to ask that. And the doctors who are total professionals, Walter Reed Medical Center, they're great people. And I visited a soldier.
that's true, but also
badly wounded, incredible soldier, lost his leg, and
oh shit.
who has spent a lot of time with him.
Yeah,
I mean, great with his
that may
mother.
be the case,
And it
but
was really
again,
a
like I
very
said,
great
the
thing.
U.S.
They do a
the
phenomenal
president
job. I
has
just wanna say
discretion
Walter Reed, I
over
was there for 5-6
most
hours.
foreign
You were there with
affairs
me.
and border control.
But I took a
or
full
border patrol.
physical and it came out perfecto, so it's good. It means you've got me for a little longer.
Would the U.S. be willing to?
Which is why I believe the Supreme Court voted 9-0 on that.
I do
On that,
something
in that
to
regard.
help them out, yeah. They're great facilities, very strong facilities.
Like I said,
and
if he was a citizen, whole different story, but
They
he's
don't
not.
play games. I'd like to go a step further. I mean, I said it to Pam. I don't know what the laws are.
And that's the
We
other
always
thing.
have to obey the
We
laws,
can
but
deport anyone
we
that is
also
not a
have
citizen at
homegrown
any time
criminals
for
that
any
push people
reason.
into subways that
We don't want you here because
hit
you're no longer
elderly
welcome.
ladies on the back of the
It's
head
as
with a
simple as that.
baseball bat when they're not looking.
If you
that
come from
are
a state that has at-will work, for
absolute
example,
monsters. I'd like to include them in the group
stop.
of people.
I'll bring
to get
that
them
point
out of the
back after
country,
this.
But you'll have to be looking at the laws on that, Steve, okay?
Essential is it for you guys to be locking up these prisoners? And do you think more presidents should follow suit like you guys as far as taking a hard stance on crime here in the United States?
Well, I do. I think everybody has to.
absolutely
The president
agree.
said it better than anybody. He said,
Your president's
you
the
have
leader. He should be
liberty
the
and
one
you have to have
dictating,
liberty, but to have liberty, you're gonna.
especially if
not
he went into
everybody's
power,
gonna be-
you know, legally and rightfully so.
And you know, some are bad because they're sick. They're mentally deranged. They're bad.
The president's supposed to lead
Then
and
you have to take them, if you're gonna have a country.
bring prosperity to his
You're gonna have
people.
to take those people out.
Simple as that.
And we've been doing that. But this was like an unforced error, they would call it, where we had people that may hate our country, or maybe they're just stupid people. I think they're probably stupid people more so. A lot of people said they did it for the vote. But I did better with Hispanic people than they did, because they always use Hispanic. I did better. You people love me. I saw my poll numbers in your country up through the roof, right? 91% No, some people think.
So
they do it
obviously
for
he's
the
talking
vote,
about the election and
but
everything.
they don't have to do it for the vote. They cheat, they're professional cheaters. That's about the only thing they do well. So we just have had a great relationship, and it's become bigger because of a strange thing that happened. I came back. We had no war in Ukraine. We had no October 7th Middle East problem. We had
Which
nothing.
is also true.
We had no inflation. We didn't have the Afghanistan.
The whole inflation
most
thing,
embarrassing moment
I don't
in the
agree with
history
that.
of our country, the Afghanistan.
Obviously,
Not withdrawing, because
the
I
inflation
was
wasn't
back.
as high,
I
but
had
it
to
was
go
still
to
there.
Bring people out with dignity and pride. That was the worst, most embarrassing moment in the history of our country, Afghanistan. We didn't have any of that.
All right, not
You
the
wouldn't have had
worst,
the war
but
with
definitely
Russia,
up there,
Ukraine. You wouldn't have had the
100%
Middle
up
East
there.
problem because Iran was.
The way we left Afghanistan is so ridiculous in that the fact you have people actually holding on to a plane that's taking off, you're that desperate to get out of the country you're in. Jeez, I mean, yeah, I know it's been a while, but you take a look back at that stuff, man, and it's brutal, and it makes us look kind of sad and weak and pathetic. Obviously, at some point, we do have to leave and get out of there, but it's just the way we handled it. Yeah, just shameful.
Was broke. They had no money because we had secondary sanctions on and lots of other sanctions. And now
Agreed.
every single thing.
I think
Got a
we're
problem
winning
with Iran,
100%.
I'll solve that problem. That's almost an easy
People are
one.
actually,
We got to solve a war. that
wanting to
shouldn't have
be
a start,
allies and friends
Ukraine
with us
Russia,
because we won't
and we'll get
just
that
hand them
solved.
stuff, right? Like now they actually have to
And, we
work
have to
for it.
solve
So now they have to
problems, and
actually
we
be
already
more
solved
respectful
inflation. If
without
you look at
thinking
the
that it's just going to
numbers,
come
the
to
numbers
them,
are incredible.
all
Actually,
nilly-willy and stuff.
stock market's up, and we're not letting other countries take advantage of this country like they have for the last 40 years. So thank you very much. You have a question?
I don't
please?
think I mean, look,
You scored another major investment win.
the guy has been in office for all of what? We're in April, 3 months. Like I said, the economy is it's been 3 months, right? Obviously, especially with all the new changes and everything, there is going to be some issues and difficulties. But I think once settled, I would say probably 6 to 9 months. So essentially a year, right? It will be way better for us overall because I think what's going to end up happening is that, like most people think, we're going to leverage the tariffs to get better deals. And for us, that ends up making things cheaper, right? Now, the companies that do come back to the States, I think products like that is going to be more expensive. So like we're already paying so much for an iPhone, right? Or anything that was made overseas, like Apples and iPhones and stuff like that, right? I don't see how that's going to get any cheaper being stateside. They'll have to figure that out. But I think overall things that were like cars and stuff will be cheaper coming back to the States, for example. So we'll just have to wait and see. I'm willing to give it a year just to see if we're actually going to end up with a better economy. And if it is, cool. We spent 4 years wasting away our economy little by little under Biden. So if we gave him 4 years, I can give Trump a year. So yeah.
This morning, Nvidia pledged to build its AI supercomputer, the first time ever, right here in the United States.
Thank you. That's a question I like. That's true.
What is your reaction to this announcement, sir, and how will this positively benefit Americans across America?
Well, it's one of the biggest announcements you'll ever hear because Nvidia, as you know, controls that almost the entire sector, which is one of the most.
So Nvidia
important
makes
sectors
manufacturing
in the
chips and
world,
stuff.
between chips and
Their
semiconductors
computers,
and everything else. So
especially if you build
they're the
your own
biggest,
computers, you'll realize like
the other biggest,
how much we
already
actually
have coming
need
in
stuff
and
like
spending
that.
300 million,
But
as
yeah,
you know, they announced 2 weeks ago.
because I don't. Do we even
But
have chips in the
Nvidia
States?
is
That's
so
something I have to
highly
look up.
respected.
And not just
And
in
this
AI, but
was
in
an
general.
announcement a lot
That's
of
something I
people-
have to look up real
I
quick.
knew it was going to happen, but not to the extent that it happened. It's big. And the reason they did it is because of the election on November 5th and because of a thing called tariffs. As I say, the most beautiful word in the dictionary. After love, God, relationship. The press actually hit me and said, tariff is the most beautiful word in the dictionary. What
Yeah,
about
I don't know about all that,
family,
but, you
love,
know.
God?
Everyone has
I
a
got hit
favorite
even
word.
on that. You understand? I said, okay. So now I say it's my fifth most favorite word because they get
All
to
right, so he's changing it up.
But
You gotta learn and
no,
evolve, right?
that Nvidia, it's one of the great companies of the world, modern, super modern companies, controls segments that nobody, you know.
I'm not gonna lie, I wish I would have read a
controls
little
the
bit more
world in a
from
sense, and they're
President
coming in here in
Bukele,
the
but,
biggest
you know,
way with
it is what it
hundreds
is.
of billions of dollars, not like millions of dollars, hundreds of billions of dollars, and I'm honored by it. And I want to thank Jensen and all of the people that we deal with. They're great people, they're brilliant people. And without tariffs, they wouldn't be doing it.
Hey everyone, I'm Emily Campagno.
Alright, so that's the end of that video. I'm gonna get into another video after, so we'll keep it going. But I did want to say, so the other thing is, right, if we get rid of our deficit or cut it down significantly, we end up on the winning side of that. Because guess what? Our debt's paid. We're no longer paying just the interest alone on all that stuff. And so for us, what ends up happening is that, one, either your taxes are going to, and I know that's probably not going to be the case, but we can always hope, your taxes get reduced to a lower percentage. Prior to World War I, I believe, we didn't pay taxes as like citizens, U.S. citizens, right? Most, unless we went to war. Now, most of our taxes came from tariffs. That's how the government was paid, and that's how they were used. So there is a possibility in this world where we get back to that point. Now, I think it's going to happen way past after Trump's out of office, but it's a possibility, especially if he starts bringing down the deficit. But yeah, so let's get into another video. Let's see. What was it? All right. This was
Let's bring
the
in
video
constitutional attorney and former federal
I think this
prosecutor
is where
Katie
they went on the
Cherkasky.
9-0
Katie, good morning
vote.
to you. So there is some nuance to this Supreme Court ruling on the Alien Enemies Act that is allowing both sides to claim legal victory here.
You say I'm
so
ignorant,
tell us
but
more about this
you didn't
ruling
tell me
and
why
what
you
it means
think
for
I'm ignorant, so,
deportations
you know,
moving forward.
Whatever.
Well, essentially, the Supreme Court recognized that the president has broad authority to declare whether somebody should be in this country under the Alien Enemies Act. And that's something that the Supreme Court has ruled on the other times that it looked at this act. And what that means really for the people that are removed is that they have one option through a habeas petition to essentially challenge whether.
Sorry. So for, sorry to pause, but yeah, this is the first time I've done any kind of content other than gaming. So yeah, this is literally the first video that's political or anything. So, so far I like it, but I'll definitely look at, later today, you know what, we'll do that. We'll do a debate, video of me reacting. So I think that's going to be the goal for probably around 7. We'll go for 7 Eastern time, right? And, okay. I just wasn't sure. I was a little bit confused, but I got you. So thanks, Matthew. But yeah,
they
let's keep
are
going.
in fact subject to that act and can bring those individual cases in the district where they're confined, but they cannot come forward as a class and try to claim that President Trump has overstepped his bounds. The Supreme Court's recognized that the president has almost limitless bounds to declare whether something is a danger
Like
to
I
our
said with
country.
Salvador,
It's a
man.
national
Imagine them
security
doing
issue,
that
and that's what essentially this ruling did
5-month or
at this
5-year
point,
period,
allowing
which
these
is
people to move forward
insane.
individually with habeas petitions to say that they're actually not a member of this gang, for instance.
You said moving forward, and I'm glad you said that because we first need to take a step back. That same judge today, Judge Boasberg, is going to hold a preliminary injunction hearing on whether to hold Trump administration officials in contempt over that plane flight, the original one, to El Salvador.
Maybe in the future
Do
I'll
you
end up
think the
changing your
Supreme
mind.
Court decision will have any bearing on Judge Boasberg's decision, his thinking in any way, Katie?
Well, I certainly think that the Supreme Court's decision should have a huge impact on that, because essentially this case should never have been even brought before Judge Boasberg, and he should not have began to rule upon it according to the Supreme Court. It should have only been brought individually as a habeas petition on behalf of individual detainees. So his
Exactly, and that's the other thing people forget, right? Once, I mean, you can't go higher than the Supreme Court. once they've decided that it is legal or it's allowed, there's nothing lower courts can do, right? Supreme Court's at the top. They're the highest land of the law, outside of the president and Congress at certain times and certain points, right? Because at the end of the day, the president can enact martial law. He well, no, I don't want to say he rules everything, but he's actually going to be the one dictating what happens during those troubled times. Usually that happens during wars and stuff like that, which at the end of the day, he still needs approval from Congress. So it's not anything crazy that he's doing. It's just typical things that would happen or change. So yeah.
Authority over this case essentially never existed, and I would think that would extend to any sort of orders he purported to issue.
Okay, well, in an entirely separate deportation case, the former Columbia University grad student and anti-Israel protester Mahmoud Khalil will likely make his first public appearance in front of a Louisiana immigration judge today.
So
How significant?
I know this is a little bit behind, guys, and I do apologize for that. I've been at work over the weekend, but I did see this already, and we'll get into that video as well. That we guess we're getting ready to deport him. I saw a quick snippet when I was at work. We got TVs and stuff like that, so it was definitely I figured that's what would happen because, like I said earlier in the video, at the end of the day, the U.S. has the ability to deport anybody that is not a U.S. citizen, and it can be for any reason whatsoever. I know people think they can or disagree with it, but that is actually the case, right? It's like if you work in a state that has at-will work, which means that you are allowed to fire anybody without cause, right? Now, the flip side of that is if you give a reason, now you have to defend it. So if Apple was working in, say we're in Virginia, right? Apple's there, and you're working there, and they said, hey, we got to lay off people. At the end of the day, they could say, we're laying you off, and they don't have to give you a reason. But if they do give you a reason, then you actually have to, it has to be that reason why they fired you, right? And then you have to actually have paperwork and documentation. Because if not, and you fired them for a false reason, then that's when people go to court, you get sued over it, stuff like that. So, it actually, John, it actually used to. So, I mean, and you can, again, do your own, you can look it up yourself, but prior to World War I, tariffs were used to fund the federal government. So, again, you don't have to take my word. You can look it up yourself. Now, again, that exemption was during wartime, right? During war, citizens were taxed, and then the tax would go away, and then it'd come back when it went to another war. The only issue was we were always at war back then, so it's like there was always a good chunk of time we were being taxed. But it was a lot of our tax. The things that we were exporting is the taxes or the tariffs that we were using to keep or to fund the government. So. CDK, yeah, sounds about right. But hey, that's the way it goes. That's the law of the land, right? If you don't like it, you can always move to a different state.
Is this appearance today, and where is this case going moving forward?
Rivera, 100%. I agree with you on that.
That case
right?
has
They're
been
criminals, leave them
touted as
there,
some sort of
especially
First
if they're not
Amendment
US
issue. But at the
citizens,
end
right?
of the day, it's a matter of whether somebody that's here as a guest on a visa has the right to support a terrorist organization, essentially, and whether that would lead to their revocation of the right to be here. And I certainly think that that's the path that this is headed down. The Secretary of State has very broad discretion to revoke visas for that purpose. And certainly there's been a lot of distraction in terms of his rights and the First Amendment here, but that's not really what this all boils down to. It is essentially a unilateral decision that is subject to very little judicial discretion.
One more for you, Katie. An appeals court has ruled that DOGE can continue to access government information for now. I don't know about you, but in order to root out government fraud, waste, and abuse, it seems to me pretty important to be able to access
absolutely. They do have
data.
constitutional
How important
rights.
is this
They absolutely have constitutional rights, but it doesn't mean that, how do I put this? Like I said, right? For example, one of the things that they don't have a right to is to stay in the country. If the government, for whatever reason, says you're not allowed to be here, we don't want you, guess what? You have to leave, right? I mean, sure, you can go into hiding, use aliases, stuff like that, but they can't well, I'm not gonna say they can't. They should not or are not legally allowed to do that with U.S. citizens. Now, if they do, like I said, that's an easy payday once everything settles in the dust.
Going forward for DOGE to carry out its overall mission.
Ferreira, I agree with you 100%. Give them a year, give them a chance.
It's incredibly important to allow DOGE to move ahead with accessing this data. Essentially, again, this was more of a preliminary hearing, but the court said that DOGE can access the data in order to do its work, and that there hasn't been any harm that's been spelled out for the court at this point. It's all kind of hypothetical, and that's not something that a court can
100%,
address.
right.
So certainly, it seems that
don't go to a foreign country. Don't show your ass, right? That's like me going to, I don't know, right? If I went to China and said, fuck the Chinese government, that's going to be a bad day for me. So obviously, like, know where you're at, be respectful, don't show your ass, and generally you'll have a good time and things usually work out.
These courts are recognizing the power of the president under the Constitution, which is very important, I think, at this point, needless to say.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, if you're keeping a tally at home, there are 3 rulings that came down yesterday that the Trump administration is celebrating this morning. Katie, got to leave it there. Thank you so much for joining us. Have a great day.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
And here we go. A Fox News alert. The Supreme Court giving a major boost to President Trump's border agenda, clearing the way for deportation flights to resume using the Alien and Enemies Act after an Obama-appointed judge tried to block it. Let's bring in the Attorney General for the United States, Pam Bondi. Madam Attorney General, thank you so much for joining the program.
Thank you. Good morning. It's a great day for America, and it's a great day to be a Florida Gator.
Well, yes, it is. More news on that later, Madam Attorney General. But let's talk about what the court did. Essentially, you know, they didn't rule when it comes to the Aliens and Enemy Act. What they said was this was the wrong venue, that the D.C. Circuit Court had no jurisdiction over that. But they also said, listen, if there's due process, then they have to do it.
I actually think this
through
goes
the
back
normal
to issue
channels, through a habeas writ. So what is the administration reaction to all that the Supreme Court just said yesterday?
Well, Lawrence, this is a landmark victory for the rule of law. And this is what we've been arguing on behalf of President Trump from day one. These are enemies of our state, of our country, and they should be deported. And what the judge ruled was going forward, from this day forward, all those planes that are gone are there. Those people are staying. So there are a lot of reasons why Americans are safer.
For the most part, right? Obviously, they still have some rights.
The hearing will be held, it's a habeas hearing, in the court of
just not the same
confinement,
as
which
US
means
citizens.
in Texas. Yeah. So it will be a much faster hearing. They can't do class actions. It will be a much smoother, simpler hearing, and these people will be deported. Americans are safer, and domestic terrorists, foreign terrorists, you better look out, because we're coming after you. I'd start self-deporting if I were you, because we're going to find you.
So, Madam Attorney General, let's get this on record. Because
you know what's crazy is that we actually have U.S. citizens that are self-deporting, right? You see all these celebrities going to like Canada and the UK and stuff. It's like, bro, you don't realize how good we have it here. I think the whole reason they don't like it is because they think it's going to be better somewhere else, and then you realize it's not, or it's like you look at it as a vacation and you go away for a little bit and then you end up back to right where you were at. So yeah, I just thought it was funny that people that are citizens are deporting themselves, essentially.
I think it's important for the audience to understand, going forward, there's no shopping as it relates to immigration anymore. If someone is detained and scheduled for a deportation, they can no longer shop across the country for a judge, a liberal leading judge. And now all the cases going forward have to go to that Texas judge. Is that correct?
Correct, Lawrence, and that's what was happening. These liberal district judges thought that they could control our entire country's policy, Donald Trump's policy, on keeping America safe. They cannot do it, and this was, again, a landmark ruling for the rule of law yesterday, and it's so important because these flights will now continue. These terrorists, they are foreign terrorists, they are alien enemies to our country, and we will continue to deport them. We are going to keep America safe, and a liberal district judge is not going to stop us, and that's what the Supreme Court ruled yesterday.
So, Madam Attorney General, let's talk about the judge in D.C. Boasberg.
It's crazy
There's a
that she's like
hearing
50-something
scheduled
years old, I
today.
believe.
Will that happen?
Looks real good for 50.
This is essentially over. Will he still try to use some type of power that he has?
Yeah, let me see how old she is.
There is a hearing scheduled today at 3 p.m. He is not canceling the hearing. He is continuing on with the hearing, but the Supreme Court has spoken loud and clear. He has no
I do gaming
jurisdiction.
too, so that might be why.
That flight will
Fuck
remain
it.
in El Salvador. Those inmates, those violent gang members, those violent alien enemies will remain in El Salvador. He cannot get them back, so his jurisdiction is over. So we'll see what he says today at 3 p.m., but going forward, these terrorists better look out.
Let's talk about this DOJ attorney that you have since put on leave. As I was reviewing the case, I found a lot of the action skeptical, interesting. It seemed like this attorney was arguing for the other side and not for the United States at that moment. At what point did you make the decision to pull him off the case?
Well, we represent the United States of America. That's our client. That's our only client, and all the agencies that fall under the federal
This is the other
government.
reason why I think
and
Trump
any
wants so
lawyer
big,
has an
right?
ethical duty to.
The U.S. government, the federal government, is meant to help citizens, U.S. citizens, and when people find out, especially after he got elected too, the amount of money we were sending to other countries and other organizations that had nothing to do with the U.S. Pretty much best way to put it, people lost their fucking shit, right? Because you got, like I said, homeless, veterans, you got medical or Medicaid and stuff that we could use to help make things better for U.S. citizens and lawful residents and stuff like that. And yeah, it's just people found it absurd that we would waste money on other things and not us first. And I'm pretty sure, like I said, that's one of the reasons why he got reelected. After all the bullshit and everything that he went through, he ended up winning, which is, again, still crazy, but...
argue on behalf of their client,
I don't think
not
so, no.
against
I hope
their
not.
client. And that's
Wow.
what happened in this case. He has been placed
I
on
like to be
administrative
reasonable,
leave,
level-headed about
and
things.
we'll see what happens.
Yeah, I think it was the right decision. You're exactly right.
There have to be
Department of Justice works for the
consequences
people.
for your actions. There will be consequences for your actions. You have to ethically argue on behalf of your client, and that wasn't happening in this case.
That's exactly right. So, Madam Attorney General, it looks like Maine is upset, the state of Maine. The president made it very clear that no more men in women's sports. Not going to happen. As a
Which,
result
again,
of that,
I
he
agree
took a
with
lot of the
100%.
funding away since they didn't want to comply. They have
Men and
since
women,
decided
boys and
that
girls
they're
should
going
never
to
play in the
sue the
same
United
sports
States government.
forcibly. Now,
you're
if
going
you
to
have
be
a
representing
co-ed
the
league,
government.
that's a whole different
What
story,
can you
right?
tell
You're
us?
choosing to be a part of that.
Well, we
But
were right to
separately,
do
no.
that. President
Definitely
Trump
should be
has the right
separate.
to determine where the money goes, where federal money goes. And also, Lawrence, on Friday, we got a great win, too, with the Department of
Oh,
Justice.
definitely.
The
Well, like I
Supreme
said,
Court ruled in
first
our
video
favor
ever, so,
on DEI and where this money can go with the Department
reactions
of
that's
Education.
not gaming,
so
so
that falls for
I
every
definitely will.
agency. We can determine where that money goes, all federal money. Now, back to Maine. Yeah, what's happening there is they're not abiding by what President Trump said. They're allowing men and women's sports. And in the case right now, what we did last night, some breaking news, we pulled all non-essential funding from the Department of Corrections in Maine because they were allowing a man in a woman's prison, a giant 6'1",
insane.
245-pound
6'1",
guy
jeez.
who committed a double murder with a knife, stabbed his parents to death and the family dog, and he identified as a woman.
Bro, what did
So
the
they were
dog
letting
have
him be housed in
He
a
must have
female
really hated
prison.
that dog.
No
Must
longer.
have barked
We
a
will
lot.
pull your funding. We will
Jeez.
protect women in prison. We will protect women in sports.
That's crazy that
we
they
will
actually
protect
put him in
women
female
throughout this
prison.
country. No more of that.
It's unbelievable
Yeah,
that
that's-
we're still dealing with this issue. It seems like the American people have spoken on this issue, but the resistance campaign continues. Madam Attorney General, thank you so much for joining Fox and Friends this morning.
Thank you. Have a great day.
Jonathan Turley, the constitutional legal professor and a Fox News contributor. He's here with us.
I
Just want to read to you from the president.
So for John, I have been outside the U.S. I've been over 25 different countries, either vacation or military. So yeah, I've been around, traveled. And yeah, so I don't know if that was all you wanted to know, if I'd ever been anywhere, but a few of the countries I can tell you: Japan, Germany, Korea, England, Switzerland, France, just to name a few. Surprisingly, I have not gone that much to South America or Central, but a lot of Europe, Africa, and Asian countries. So
Trump's post about this. The Supreme Court has upheld the rule of law in our nation by allowing a president, whoever that may be,
the Mojave Viper, CAX, all that stuff for deployments, training, and everything. So.
to be able to secure our borders and protect our families and our country itself. A great day for justice in America. Justice Sotomayor, she disagreed, though. She said this: the government's conduct in this litigation poses an extraordinary threat to the rule of law. That a majority of this court now rewards the government for its behavior with discretionary, equitable relief is indefensible. We as a nation and a court of law should be better than this. But the majority won, the president taking a little bit of a victory lap there.
When I hear the word equitable, bro, I just...
It is well deserved. It has
in
both
one ear
legal and
out
political significance here. You know, Judge Boasberg has really sort of sucked the oxygen out of the room on this case for weeks. It turns out he should never have heard the case to begin with. Many of us noted at the outset that this looked like a habeas case, and if so, it belonged in Texas. Judge Boasberg just wouldn't hear of it and kept on, including holding extraordinary sessions on Saturdays and issuing all of these orders. The problem is that the habeas proceedings are not a particularly good avenue for the detainees.
Bottom,
you know, they will
right
get
corner,
due process, but I think in the end, a lot of these individuals are going to feel like they got a perfunctory hearing and a bag of peanuts on their way to their flight. And it's one of those things under the habeas standard. I don't see how they can prevail. So they'll get their day in court. Some of them have already had a day in court, but they'll make sure of that. But I don't see under the habeas standard how many of these individuals, if any, could prevail.
So the Attorney General Pam Bondi was on Fox and Friends just a little while ago. Here's what she said about these federal judges and these nationwide temporary restraining orders.
It almost seems military.
These liberal district judges thought that they could control our entire country's policy, Donald Trump's policy on keeping America safe. They cannot do it, and this was, again, a landmark ruling for the rule of law. We will continue to deport them. We are going to keep America safe, and a liberal district judge is not going to stop us.
So this brings up a number of different issues. First of all is this idea of district judges issuing nationwide temporary restraining orders. Even Justice Elena Kagan questions
everyone does
that.
their part, right?
Then there's this idea about judge shop.
Everyone does their part, whether you're military, civilian, especially if you're in government, right? We all do our part. Obviously, no, that's a whole nother topic that we'll get into, but law enforcement, border patrol, military, right? We all do our part to help the country, and yeah, definitely appreciate it. So
Being in favorable districts like the District of Columbia. and then there's the overarching idea of whether or not these district judges even have any kind of jurisdiction over national security concerns. What do you think about all that?
That's right. And the majority in this case actually gave a sort of backhand to these judges and these challengers. They said, look, this should always have been brought in Texas. It was very clear
like I said earlier,
to many that they were forum shopping. They were
not a
looking
US
for
citizen,
a favorable
right,
judge.
you can be deported
They found a
and even
judge
then,
in Judge Boasberg.
If you're a U.S. citizen that came here from another country, right, if you weren't born in the U.S., technically, your citizenship can be revoked. Has it happened? In rare, like super rare cases, but it is possible. So, but yeah, aside from that, if you're not a U.S. citizen, right, you can be deported at any time, at any point, and that's just how it should be. Is it right morally? Depending on case by case basis, but at the end of the day, it's not your country. Until you become a citizen, and you just got to go with it, right?
Burke was willing to give them a great deal, but he should never have heard this case. On the national injunctions, that's a very serious matter. As you've noted, even liberal justices have complained. You can't run a government like this. You can't have endless sort of Lilliputian attacks of over 600 judges holding up the business of the government. Congress is moving on that, but also the Supreme Court's been clear for years. A majority on the Supreme Court has been stating in oral arguments, particularly, this has got to stop. It's just that these judges are not listening.
What is the significance of the order saying that
in fairness,
the
they probably
District
won't
Court of
stop.
Appeals
I mean,
in Washington, D.C. is not
when
the
you have an
proper venue
agenda
for
and you
this?
want to prove it, that's what you're going to do, right?
Well, I think that is part of this this slapback on form shopping, that this should have been clear, in my view, to Judge Boasberg. I have not joined in a lot of the calls for impeachment. I think that would be a huge mistake, or the attacks on the judge himself. He had a good faith argument. I thought he was wrong, and the system has worked, and he has now been taken off the case.
I didn't even know you can
Now, he's going to have a hearing
I know they can recuse
this
themselves,
afternoon,
but
which is going to be
impeach
rather odd. It's like showing up at a party and all the guests are going to the house next door. So I'm not too sure how long that hearing's going to be. But I think that it was a mistake of his to accept that. Obviously, the Supreme Court did as well. Also, the dissent is a little bit odd here with these four justices, particularly Justice Barrett. I wrote on my blog this morning, I still don't quite know why Barrett joined the dissent. She only joined a very small part of it. Part of that was saying they get due process rights, but the majority said that. So I'm still rather confused at why Justice Barrett dissented.
I'm sure Donald Trump is confused as well.
Good point.
Professor, thanks so much.
Thank you.
The DOJ,
It
we should
happens,
say,
right? People
has petitioned
flip-flop, or
Boasberg to
they
dismiss the case, so we'll see what happens.
or they
at that
read the
hearing.
law in a different manner than someone else was, or
The U.S.
interprets it
Supreme
differently.
Court
So
has handed
it
the
happens.
Trump administration a major victory. It ruled Trump is allowed to use a wartime authority to deport alleged Venezuelan gang members. Now, all of this is after Washington, D.C. Circuit District Judge James Boasberg tried to block the president. The court also ruled the appropriate venue for these kinds of proceedings would be in Texas or wherever the plaintiffs are being held. As a result, then Judge Boasberg had to cancel his D.C. planned hearing on the case today.
That's crazy too. Like
and
some
the
of the
president
people
posted
that
the U.S. Supreme Court has upheld the rule of law.
some of the people that they're bringing off and putting into the prison, bro. Some of them look so young. It's just a shame that they were ever in that situation, but unfortunately, that is life. So, yeah, it's just fit end of the stick, right?
In our nation, by allowing a president, whoever that be, to be able to secure our borders and protect our families and our country itself. A great day for justice in America. Trump's administration is also taking a victory lap. Watch.
A monumental, colossal victory for the rule of law.
A massive victory for law and order and for our constitutional republic and
John,
the
that may be
sovereignty
true,
of the United States of America.
But it's easier said than actually implemented
And this
into
is what
practice,
we've been
especially
arguing
when
on
you
behalf
start
of
bringing
President Trump from day one. These are enemies
people
of
from
our
different
state,
countries,
of our
different
country,
laws,
and
different
they should be
ideologies.
deported.
That's why we
Republican
like to have
Congressman
people
Chip Roy of
assimilated
the
in
great
the
state
U.S.
of
or
Texas,
any
member
country
of the
that you're
Judiciary,
going to travel,
Budget, and
that you
Rules
plan on
Committees.
living for a long
Welcome.
time.
Great to have you
You
in
try to have
focus.
those people
First
assimilated,
of all, I
because
just
what
want
happens
to get
here
your
is not the same
reaction
thing that
to
happens
a
in
couple
China,
of victories,
and
really,
vice
for the
versa. Or
administration.
if you go to any other country, we've got healthcare. Europe has universal healthcare. Canada does as well. We don't, right? For the most part. I mean, we have some government systems like Medicare and Medicaid, but it's not for everyone, especially if you're of higher income, right? And other countries do it. We strongly believe in military dominance. Other countries don't. So things just depend on how big your country are, what your people want, who's in charge, and what you expect out of them. And then you go from there, right? So look at England, right? They want to control the world. They did do it for a while, and then I guess their people said they didn't want to do it anymore, and they pivoted. We were the opposite. We wanted to control everything, so we pivoted to more industrial, not just military-wise, but economic-wise as well. So things change, people change, and not everything is set in stone. So yeah.
Well, first of all, this important ruling from the Supreme Court reset the table with respect.
Which is why I think Rome or Italy has prospered for as long as they have, because they adapt to the times.
To the activism, the blatant activism by Boasberg. Now, let's keep in mind what
I
the court said.
the
The court said that, look, he had no business doing this from the District of Columbia. This is a flight that was originating
and I'll
in
pull
Texas
out my
to
U.S.
remove people
passport,
that are
which
being
I
rightfully
carry with
removed
me
because
all
they're
the
a
time.
danger to
I've
our
got it in my
country.
wallet
Now, pause for a second.
because I travel a
How
lot.
do I
And
know
I'll
that they're a danger
present it
to
to
our
them.
country, Harris?
And if they arrest me, guess
people
what?
affiliated with
I'm
Trinidad
gonna sue them and
were
make money
just
off of
caught,
it.
literally in Dripping Springs, Texas, not far from where I live.
It'll be a
This
nice
is a real
settlement for
issue
me.
throughout Texas because of the absolute devastation that the Biden administration wreaked upon the United States and its people. So now President Trump is doing the right thing to remove these dangerous.
Like I said, I was in the Marine
gang
Corps,
members. And
so
this
you put me
activist
in
judge
a cell
inserted
for a
himself.
couple
Now, the
days,
good news is
and I
the
make
Supreme Court
a
said,
couple
no,
$100,000,
you don't get to do
possible
that.
millions,
This
depending
should
on
have
what
been done in
happens.
Texas.
I'm cool with it.
And there's a process for doing
Especially
this.
if you send me
the
to a
law
different
is
country.
Good law.
Oh.
My concern is that Amy Coney Barrett didn't follow the majority. So there was one that voted
Millions,
the wrong way.
bro, easily.
My other concern is that they said there needs to be a reasonable time for these folks to be able to go appeal their case, which means it's going to go back to habeas cases, which means there's going to be a churn on these cases. So it's good news, but it's not something that we should take to the bank without changing. That's why, as the chairman of the Constitution Subcommittee, we had a hearing about legislation that we need to move through the House to limit some of the abuses that are taking place with these nationwide injunctions by these rogue judges.
And Congressman, you and I have had this conversation before about the first law breaking was coming across the border illegally. And then
true.
Other acts potentially, and maybe even the previous, gangster membership for some of these people. My question is, if you're going to get habeas corpus, if you're going to have the ability to appeal, what exactly are you appealing? Because you came here illegally. You've already broken the law.
Well, that is
So
my
catch
view,
22,
and I
right?
think we should take that view as a country. I want to be very clear.
Especially
the
if you're
President of the
here
United
illegally.
States is
Like
completely
if you
correct,
literally
and he's following his
jump the
role
border
as
or came
Commander-in-Chief
here
to defend
without,
the United
like,
States
actually
of America,
getting a visa and it
to
just,
then
like,
act
expired,
and
right?
remove these dangerous actors. Remember, Jocelyn Nungare died last summer at the hands of Tren de Aragua. Cindy Romero was testifying in my committee of all the dangers that she was exposed to in the apartment complexes in Aurora, Colorado. This is real, and as I said,
if you
in
have
my
your passport
backyard,
and your U.S.
literally
citizen,
in
they
Dripping
do that,
Springs,
I
Texas,
promise
just
you,
last
bro.
week,
When you
47
get
people,
released,
including 9
you
children, by the
go
way, in what
find
we
a
believe was a
lawyer,
stash house. This is real, and the president
sue
deserves great latitude
millions.
to remove these
Like I
individuals.
said, especially if they send you away from the U.S.
Frankly,
Like,
often
forget just
funded
being
because
forget just being held, right? Like if you get held at a deportation detention center, that's one thing. I mean, you'll still get money from that. But if they actually send you out to a different country, bro, they've essentially exiled you, which they're not allowed to do. So millions, bro. Like I said, I'll take a three week to 3 month vacation, right? I know it's not a vacation, that's why Eric was. But 3 months, multi-millions of dollars, I'm good. I'll take it.
Congress is stupid and funds money to these, NGOs, and they use that to then fund this litigation. They will take these cases to court, and they'll say, "Oh no,
So
no,
I will have to
they
do
were
some research
rightfully
on the
released
SAVE
into
Act.
the
I'm
United
not too
States, and
familiar,
they deserve their day
so I
in
can't
court
really make
to
a
prove
comment
that in fact the
on it.
paroles and the
But
asylum
once I
cases
do,
that the
I'll
Biden administration
definitely take a
abused
look.
to release these dangerous criminals on our streets is something that should prevent them from being removed.
Yeah, but the thing is,
But the
you've got
president is
family,
correct to remove
or
these dangerous folks under his
which is
powers as
even
commander-in-chief.
worse, right? They denied you a lawyer, even more
you
money
can
on
let them
top,
go across the country,
tacked out to
but
the
they broke
lawsuit.
in to get in.
Correct.
Wow.
So many
Well,
civil
you
rights
mentioned
just
those
violated.
rogue judges. Let's go deeper on that. The House is actually set to vote on
but-
the no rogue ruling.
Right. If it's the case, right, that you're by yourself and everybody was against you at every turn, at every point, and you didn't have family either, like looking for you or trying to figure out where you were, that may be one thing. But that's almost, I don't want to say impossible, but very unlikely. Someone's gonna know, someone cares about you at some point. Your family, friends, relationships, they're gonna be like, yo, where's this guy at? And I'm sure at some point you'll get a phone call or you'll talk to a lawyer when you're at the detention center or something, and then you'll be like, I'm a U.S. citizen, bro. Here's my passport. Here's my social. Look me up. I don't know why I'm here. And yeah, like I said, you'll make millions.
Act today. and it aims to limit the.
I think the U.S. is like over 40. It's like close to 40% of the world's legal battles. Right, we're the most litigious state or country in the world. 40% coming out of the U.S. alone. So we know how to make our money, and some people dream of, not dream, but some people, you see those videos on YouTube, right? An officer comes up, does something illegal, violates someone's civil rights. They're not going to do it in TV or whatever, right? Or on YouTube videos, but they're going to court, bro. They're suing them, and these guys are making hundreds of thousands, if not millions of dollars. So it is a possibility of it happening, but the situation will get rectified.
Power of so-called radical district judges and restrict them from issuing nationwide injunctions against executive orders. In fewer than 3 months, judges have already blocked
if he knew
Trump's
about it
orders
as well
17 times.
And was
That's
still
more
saying,
than the injunctions
yeah, do
issued
it,
during
then
the terms
I think for
of
me it'd go
his
down. Because that's the one thing you're going to know
Here's
about me.
Republican
I'm
Congressman
very
Jeff Van Drew of
pro-American.
New Jersey.
Whether it's foreign or domestic, like anything that goes against American citizens, whether it's, again, foreign or domestic, I'm going to disagree with it. Now, again, if it's someone who's in Congress or who's the president and they're demeaning or destroying a U.S. citizen or legally trying to destroy them as well, right, or deport them, 100% going against it. Like if Trump said, hey, I know this guy's an American citizen, like I'm talking about the Salvador guy, right? If he was a dual citizen and didn't try to get him back, even though he is from El Salvador as well. No, actually, you know what? That's a bad hypothetical. I take that back. Just say he was a U.S. citizen and he wasn't a Salvadorian citizen. If Trump didn't try to get him back and do it in the States, then I would have an issue with that.
That has gotten to the point of they believe they're the legislators, they believe they're the executive branch, they believe they're judicial branch, and some of them have extremely partisan
We can disagree, but at the end of the day, you should love your country. And then if you think there is something wrong, we come together and try to fix it, work on it, right? That's what you're supposed to do.
So the No Rogue Ruling Act, what will it accomplish?
Yeah, well, we will vote on that today, along with the SAVE Act, which was my bill to guarantee that only citizens vote in American elections. These are two important pieces of legislation.
Yeah.
This bill would stop these nationwide injunctions by saying that they should only apply to the parties before the judge. But then it allows, in the instance of an injunction, and then it would go immediately to the Supreme Court. This would stop a single judge from being able to unilaterally make law effectively by stopping action by issuing an injunction or a TRO, but would force it through a process that makes more sense. It is a good bill. We passed it out of the Judiciary Committee. I hope we will move it on the floor this week and send it over to the Senate. But then we'll look for all of the obstruction that we'll normally get out of Chuck Schumer and the Democrats. But our job is to do our work in the House and send it to the Senate. We think this is an important move to preserve the ability to go to court, but not allow a single judge like Boasberg, who was just slapped down by the Supreme Court for getting out of his lane. We don't want to have that happen in the future, and this legislation would try to prevent that.
You know, in normal circumstances, you would have a situation where other district and circuit court judges would look at that and say, well, if they're going to slap him down, why even start the game? But this is not normal. They want to slow down the president of the United States, even if they can't stop him. Your last quick word.
Well, this is an emergency, and Stephen Miller's been dead on point on this. The Commander-in-Chief has the ability and the power to defend our country. We have radical, dangerous, illegal people in the United States affiliated with dangerous gangs, cartels, moving drugs, killing Americans. They need to be removed. And frankly, after the millions of people released in the United States, the president needs deference to do that, and we ought to move as Congress to back him up on that.
You have
think
rights,
that we
right?
as Americans could all agree on kicking
it's just not going to be
out first.
the same rights as U.S.
Congressman,
citizens.
great to see you.
And
Always.
vice versa. It would not be the
God
case.
bless you,
Hey, Sean Hannity here. Hey, click here to subscribe.
So I don't really, if you deny a human his rights, you deny your own too. See, I mean, but that's the thing. What do we agree on our rights, right? The right to live, right to what? Eat, breathe, drink. Like, not all things are our rights. That's a thing that us as human beings forget. Like if you were in a jungle, right? You got tossed into the jungle. You're not gonna tell a lion like, "Hey, I have a right to eat your meat too." Like, it wouldn't work like that. We have rights because each group of people have their own views of the world, and what we have as rights in the US is not the same thing that China has as rights. So I mean, it all comes down to what country you're from, where you live. Now, certain things like, do I think that life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness and things like that should be allowed throughout the world? Absolutely. But that's not always the case, and some cultures don't always see that. But yeah, I mean, that's just my 2 cents. But anyways, this was fantastic, guys. I definitely appreciate you guys joining, watching, liking, and subscribing. First video that I've ever done for a reaction outside of gaming. Like, I haven't done a music reaction or anything. Usually it's just me playing video games and people tuning in. So I definitely really appreciate it, guys. I think I'll be back on. I will be back on because I made a promise defense here. I'll be back on tonight about 7:30. So a couple hours break. Probably stop at the bar, grab a few drinks and stuff, and then yeah, we'll get right back into it. So again, thanks for joining, guys, and I'll see you in a couple hours.